always clear to me that Mexico doesn't know anything about zoning because everything's just a hodgepodge. But I mean, just.
Tijuana is dangerous.
Yeah, there are areas. There are definitely areas. Yeah, Tijuana. There's some other spots where, there's even some of the bigger cities. Mexico City is 20 million people. I mean, there's places you don't want to go.
So it's like anywhere else.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Nobody?
No stragglers anywhere down there.
All right, well, I guess we'll get started anyway.
What does that mean for referrals?
You can make an advisory, basically, but not official vote.
Who votes? Just
I'm still talking about the advisories. Does anybody know why Charlie Miller wants to split off 100 acres?
the application didn't, it said on the application, there's no intent to develop the parcel,
I believe that.
but it didn't go farther.
It usually seems if somebody splits off a smaller chunk like that, they want to build a house on it. It's typically,
I thought I heard it was for a relative, the smaller.
that's what I would assume, but I don't know.
Donnie Miller just came in and is doing most of a lot of the work, a lot of combining, all of that type of work. And so I think that Charlie has, a plan to go ahead and pass it over to Donnie. But Donnie just built his house over there, and I just don't understand why he would split off 100 acres. I might have to get nosy.
Well, we could just ask for more information, right? We've done that on other referrals. So we can comment on these and still send them along, and then
You can just note that there wasn't a quorum, but that you still reviewed them.
Do we want to go ahead? There's just 2 referrals, so
do you prefer? Do you have to leave?
I have a 7:30 the only thing, so we should be done by then.
then that's where we'll focus.
Do you want to do referrals first or solo?
We could probably do them quick and then go to solo if that works.
The first one is on Brickyard Road.
Is there really a brickyard on Brickyard Road?
There was. The Artisan Roots was actually the brick factory. Downstairs in the display cabinet in the main area, there's actually some bricks and pictures of the brick factory.
Appropriate name.
This parcel had been for sale for a while.
That's County Road. You come down the curve before you get to your keys.
Looking at Encore, I mean, it looks very flat, doesn't do it justice, but this is actually pretty steep and everything flows down to Power Brook. And unfortunately, they cleared that entire parcel off with a bulldozer without getting any approvals and just started doing it. So there's nothing there except for wide open dirt now. Chris had to go out and stop them.
There's a wetland on the northern
Yep.
part of the parcel.
No, probably not anymore.
Oh, I saw that the other day. Okay, yeah, I know what that
It
is.
was mapped as a wetland.
It's very steep there.
It is very steep there. They even tiered it, it's so steep.
It's unfortunate. I thought I opened it, but- Oh, I did. So that's where it is. They are requesting a single stage site plan to build a new home. It's not in an ag district, it's not being farmed, but it's adjacent to Catalpa Acres PDR, kind of surrounded by it. There was no ag plan rating because it's little and open space. They didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. I left that part in there legally, but it wasn't rated by the open space plan either because it's small. It is in the Greenway and the farmlands protection area, not in the forest protection area, and it's not in our watershed. Here are your soils.
Doesn't look like bird person.
I would say
It's like-
that it has no impact. Given that I've seen it too, it's, you know, what you're gonna do with it.
So it's a good use for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably. a good
And
use
you,
for it.
obviously, you guys got it because it's close proximity to a farm.
I'm sure the planning board will make them take care of the stormwater stuff, but
Put some wetlands
Yeah, I guess
back in.
That's not for us to comment on at all.
yeah, no, not really. Because it's not really ag of any kind, other than it's adjacent to the PDR.
So, yeah, I guess we agree that there's really no impact, no loss of farm land.
That's her advice.
Open up this one. So that's where we're at. There's another panel. Sorry. I opened in here, that's why I couldn't. All right. So this one, 108 acre parcel, they wanted to create two lots, one 100 acres and the other one about 8 acres. And again, on the application in two different places, it says there's no intent to develop either lot at this time. We don't really know what their future plans are. It is an ag district, it is farm, presumably by Charlie Moon. It received a fairly good rating on the ag plan because of the soil for the most part. Because there's a fairly good number of acres of prime soils on that parcel. Open space plan also rated it highly because there's wetlands and streams running through the parcel. All through here. There's some wetland area over here. And I think there's a little snip of it over here somewhere. When I turn on the layers, which I want to turn back on if you want, but anyway, the rest of it. And then, it is in the farmland protection area, not in forest protection area, it is in the Canandaigua watershed. And it's all the information together.
Did you go back to the map again?
Yes.
Okay, so that's his property right there. That's where he lives. It's actually really nice land.
I drive by it every day.
You have the subdivision plan?
Yeah, I can pull it up. Have to open that
Do,
down here.
do we have the right to ask for more information?
Yeah, I think you can ask for anything, especially if you're trying to make a determination whether or not it's impacted agriculture.
You know, they said they have no intent to develop it this time, does that mean like at this time now or
Right.
this time?
You don't know, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean in 90 days, there's going to be another application for?
Has morale, gotten to it?
Down it, not down here. Not with our new law. Morel wouldn't really be able to do it unless they're running sewer all the way down there.
Switching over to sheet.
Miller 81.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Because with the new law, you can only have
No.
3 homes without running sewer on a
You want to look like
subdivision.
way down
So
at the
like,
bottom, isn't it?
I just searched
we
for
don't
it.
even have, for sure we don't have sewer down here. So there would
We don't
be,
even need
yeah.
the order.
so
What?
there would be no way for them to, Morel wouldn't even be able to build
Or
without running sewer all the way down there. That would be so expensive.
You go back and take a look at it.
We've done
There's,
pretty more on those open spots.
is that this
Right.
road?
men in order.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's in
Right.
Hickox, right? So,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's not too far from where the new development is.
I don't
The other side of 21, up next
I know what you're talking about, but that sewer is on the
Okay.
eastern portion of that parcel, so it's even further. I mean, that would still be a hike.
Gotcha.
All right, sorry, I just pulled up. So here's an overall view. There's 32, here's Hickox. So lot 1 is the left side and part of the right side, and then they want lot 2 to be just smaller. So lot 2 on this would be down here, and the rest is lot 1. That makes sense. And then they have a blow up. Only lot 2, I guess. They only blew up a little one.
Who put this together for? It's professional.
You just go back to the bottom right corner.
Oh.
That's Freeland, yeah, surveyors.
That's who did,
That could be an old survey though. No, it says August 10th.
that's who did the one for, Purdy PDR, but it's part of Mark's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could have been worse.
Did you want to see anything else from the application?
Wasn't much more.
No.
I think it would
Just
be
the application.
appropriate not to necessarily ask what you plan to do with that, but more so of, do you have any long-term plans for developing this property?
Yeah, I would say if just the subdivision doesn't cause any loss of farmland, but any future plans could, so. So could we just ask for any more information they're willing to provide? I guess if they don't want to provide any, then they don't need to, right?
True.
Typically for subdivision, though, you don't have to give a reason why. As long as it meets the
As long as it meets the code, they can pretty much, it's an as of right thing. But you can ask, or, and, I should say, not or, you could ask, and if they're not willing to provide, or if the application, if it's not gonna end up coming back to you because of timing with the planning board, you could ask the planning board to reserve any future approvals for development until that it be revisited based on the lack of information available at the time of the subdivision application, something like that.
If they do anything else, like build a house or something, come back.
Yeah, would have to come back through.
That's true. So just a request for more information. Future plans. Looks, there's another one for Miller on there too. isn't there? I guess. It's not up for us.
It may be enough.
They put 2 in when they put this one in. I forget what the other
Yes,
one.
there was another one for,
We only got this one.
No, okay.
We only got these 2. Okay. That's it for approval.
it's almost 7:30. Or is it 6:30?
No, 6:30, we still got plenty of time.
I don't know what time zone then.
We'll talk about solar law. Let me jump in. Okay.
Yep.
So I know that you guys have previously looked at this. So a couple general core 30,000 foot version of this before we get into some of the details. But essentially, the state has now come out with new guidance relative to solar farms. And they've identified them and labeled them as tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on their size and their kilowatts and all that stuff. So what this law does is it brings into account those same definitions that the state uses for tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's kind of on the last page here. But the tier 1s are the roof mounted
and the building integrated systems, as well as the ground systems, with a capacity of up to 25 kilowatt, or the total solar surface area of up to 4,000 square feet, and also on-farm solar energy systems designed to support an existing agricultural operation and community. So those would all be tier 1, and essentially what this law does is you can pretty much do tier 1 most any place in the town of Canandaigua, provided, asterisk, asterisk, that it has to be less than 8 acres, which we'll get to in a second, and provided that there is, the planning board finds that it is not a loss of valuable agricultural land. That is still in this whole thing. So you could do tier 1 pretty much most any place. Tier 2 are really the systems that are larger than 25 kilowatts, that are in an area up to 8 acres, no more than 8 acres. And then the tier 2 areas are restricted more so, but they're still able to be done in most of those places. Again, determining that essentially that there's no finding the loss of agricultural land. Most of our farms that are currently in the town of Canandaigua are right about that 8 acre threshold or larger. If they're larger than 8 acres with this law, once this is enacted, they would be considered a tier 3 system. The tier 3 systems would be prohibited in all of the agricultural areas of the town of Canandaigua, flat out prohibited. So you could only do a tier 3 system in the community commercial industrial areas, limited industrial areas. Additionally, tier 4 is the largest of the systems that are typically the systems that would be, somebody would try to circumvent the town. They would go directly to the state under the Article 10, I believe it is, and the state would permit them. However, typically in the state of New York, anytime the state is going to do something like that, the state will default to the local zoning. So that was why it was important for us to write in the zoning for the tier 4s. And so what we've said here with tier 4 system is the only way that you'd be able to put a tier 4 system in the town of Canandaigua is if associated with the application, the applicant and the owner of the property made application to the town board to do incentive zoning. Incentive zoning requires it requires a community benefit, and the town board would have to make that decision, whether that's a financial commitment, contribution to the town for something, or some other amenity or something that's being provided to the town in exchange for that incentive zoning. So it really is very, very limiting. And we have since heard the time that we've drafted this that the state will likely honor the zoning requirements for the tier 4 when a municipality puts those in. So backing up for a second, it would further define, and this law is intended to further protect our agriculture areas of the town by saying you can only have up to an 8 acre system in some of these areas where currently you could have, I think even I measured off in the one meeting, I think the Travis Woolley piece was larger than 8 acres, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's larger than 8 acres. You could measure it off on Uncore.
I think when Shauna measured it, one of the meetings, it was 9.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a little bigger than 8 acres. So for instance, if it is larger than 8 acres, it would not be able to be permitted the way it currently is. No, that's not to say they couldn't get a variance if everybody agrees that it's not also agricultural land. So there's still relief there, but.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that if it's a site that would be good for solar,
Mhm.
I would think it'd be better to put a larger one there if needed or desired to keep it out of other areas, or instead of having a bunch of smaller ones.
Or just try to limit them, because I mean, really, realistically, what we're seeing is these very, very large. Like we have a concept application right now for that Primo property over there on the Michigan Road. What is that? Do you remember, Kim, how big that one is? It's big.
The one that they came in and talked about sheep.
Yes, but
There-
it's,
It's still in the.
it's
Word
bigger than
docs.
10. I almost think it's bigger.
40.
Yeah, it's big.
Where's Lunch Road again?
Because that one was
Yeah.
40, and I thought the one,
Just follow,
I forget the name of the property, but it's where the land that Rockland Bank's farm, I thought that was 40 or 60.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the new state regulations and then mirroring this law, so that 40-acre system, that would actually be a tier 4 system. And so what the ordinance committee is recommending is, and really the majority of the members of the town board at this point are saying, no, we don't want 40-acre systems in the town of Canada, unless they were part of an incentive zoning package.
I find this
10 acres-ish.
really interesting because I deal with energy storage systems from a life safety perspective and
Mhm.
runaway lithium battery fires. That's what I do.
Mhm.
And so it is very interesting to consider, these huge utility scale solar power facilities and how efficient are they really? And you recall we were talking about this last time. The guy said from the solar company that it would not be efficient for them to build solar in this area without government subsidies.
Mhm.
Point is
Mhm.
that if there's going to be any construction of solar facilities in this area, then it should exclude, if you excluded any type of projects that have government subsidies, can you control, the size of it? And from my perspective, I think residential, single house residential, distributed, not a utility level, but localized,
Mhm.
is great.
Mhm.
I would do it.
Mhm.
But to have, 100 acres around Charlie Miller's farm with solar panels would be really upsetting.
There's some huge ones, like in Western New York, like 2,000 acres.
Mhm.
They're not there yet, but and some of them aren't even happening.
Mhm. Even with that example that you used, that would still be a small scale system of up to 4,000 square feet, like the on-site, the home, and that would be tier 1. So you can do that anywhere in the town.
So should we be encouraging, tier 1, providing incentives for those types of things? Not for these large money grabbing,
Mhm.
government money grabbing type of projects.
And just for reference, Travis Willie, if they made it just a little bit smaller, could be, it's just a bit too big at 10 acres, but.
So just using that as an example, just to be clear about this, so that would be a tier 3 system, larger principal uses with greater impacts. Tier 3 systems are those not included in tier 1 or tier 2 that have a nameplate capacity of 5 megawatts or facility area of up to 40 acres inside. So it's greater than 8, smaller than 40, it'd be tier 3, which means it would be limited to the community commercial industrial or limited industrial, or he could apply for a use variance. Potentially get it, but
Yeah.
potentially.
So it could
As
still go
is.
on poorer land like that would.
It would be a very difficult road to get that approved. Now, at
Unless
8
they
acres,
made it a little bit smaller.
right, at 8 acres, he could get it approved.
Not by much. I mean, I went outside.
Yeah.
What if
Anyway, just
someone,
for-
could you, what if you had a larger parcel, could you subdivide it and have 2 8 acre?
2 acres, that was the other question I was gonna, how close can they
Yeah.
build
there's
one
gonna be
8
ways they're gonna
acre
try and work around.
facility to another 8 acre facility?
I mean, they would be treated as independently because it's always the property application, right? So could you do 2 parcels with 8 acres as long as it met the setbacks? I guess theoretically you could, but it's the total facility area is the way that those are measured. So it's unlikely. And then the bigger companies, they want these big projects anyway. They're not looking for 8 acres. They're looking for 50, 100 acres.
So the most recent ones, like these guys that came in to talk to us,
Mhm.
that they can't even do what they want to do.
Not at those locations.
Yeah.
Mhm. unless they apply for a use variance and were successful in that.
Hmm.
Or go straight to the state and then try to go in as a tier 4. They could apply as a tier 4, in which case they would have to demonstrate some sort of benefit back to the town board as to why they should get approval to do it.
How successful have those been around other areas? Or
With-
in the,
The tier 4s.
yeah, people trying to get the state involved so they can,
So this is brand new. I mean, this is just, these definitions and stuff are new this year. But the state has permitted these larger entities like the ones you're talking about. The state has just come through and said, yeah, you can put that in that municipality. But the difference is, most cases, those local municipalities don't have the zoning in place.
okay.
Does the state, I'm not sure what agency it is doing this, but do they involve ag and markets in these decisions at all?
Well, I think officially they say yes, but there's a lot of, when those are permitted through the Article 10, generally a lot of times those applications are just granted, those permits are granted.
Who's the, there's the last election on the back page of the ballot.
Proposition.
Yeah, there's a proposition where they gave like $150 million, and that's going to be used
Take
for
a bond.
renewable energy
Yeah.
type of situations. So they're funded now.
Yeah.
But I heard they don't have enough manpower to go ahead and manage, the distribution of all that money.
Mhm.
And the fund will not, they will not allow any of the funds that were provided to hire the manpower to actually carry out the act. So, isn't that interesting?
Mhm. And the proposition was actually for a bond, so actually taking out municipal bonds for the. Yeah, I'm sure, it's going to be interesting, the governor's state of the state address when she does that in January, because she has clearly made a priority of renewable energy and solar specifically. She's also made a priority, she's made it very clear, housing. And so there are going to be some battles with local municipality about zoning matters over this next year. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, and specifically on the housing front. And she said that one way to address the housing shortage is to allow second dwellings per parcel. And so if the state makes that decision, then that's going to be interesting to see how the local municipalities deal with that.
Might as well put solar panels on top of the roof too, and you solve it all in one.
Yeah. So to be determined. We're going to be watching that closely. But
So the state can tell a municipality to do something other than what the zoning is?
well, that's where it becomes quite interesting, because if the local municipality doesn't have any zoning, like in the example of what we talked about, or has limited zoning or outdated zoning that really doesn't take into account some of the solar issues, then pretty much, yes, the state can just tell them to do. If the local municipality has updated it and has very clear parameters, not to say that it's not allowed, we're not prohibiting with this law the 40-acre or greater solar farms, but we are saying if you're going to do it in the town of Canandaigua, you have to do it in the incentive zoning. You have to show a demonstrated benefit to the community that is decided by the town board of the town of Canandaigua.
So what does that mean, though? What does the town of Canandaigua town board want?
Well, so that's where it becomes very wide open for the town board to decide that, right? Because we have a comprehensive plan, a new comprehensive plan that talks about the need for public access to the lake. It talks about the need for renewable energy. It talks about any number of things. They could say, okay, the benefit to the town of Canandaigua is we want you to provide $10 million to us to provide public access to the lake. And if the solar company says yes, then they may say, okay, you can have your incentive zoning. I mean, it could be that big, or it could be something much, much smaller. So that's why it's really not defined per se. They get to make that decision as the primary elected officials. So it definitely makes it more restrictive than what our current law is, for sure. There's no doubt about that. And really sets up the parameters. There's a lot of stuff in here about like access. There's a lot of stuff in here about the decommissioning plan and what the planning board's looking for with all of that, the emergency contact information, the approval process. There are some points specifically that were added. I think you guys have previously talked about. The application has to include a site plan with a 50-foot buffer zone of all public roadways, property boundaries, residential buildings, trees, shrubs, bushes, flowers. It also has to include soil sampling of a rate of not less than 2 tests per acre depicted and identified, the screening, the noise level. And then in the decommissioning plan, it also calls for, again, soil testing to make sure that there was no negative environmental impact on the soils.
Do they have to recycle the solar panels?
That is not specifically spelled out. That's not specifically spelled out. There was discussion about it, and it's not to say that it's not it's obviously not prohibited that they could recycle them, but I don't think it dictates that they have to. But there is a bond that has to be in place for the entire time that the system is in operation.
How long does how long does it have to stay in operation? Is there a period?
It varies. It's going to be dependent on the application. A lot of them, from what I understand, are approximately 20 years, but some of them, it's just dependent on they do require fencing on them. There's a lot coverage requirement.
Why do they need an emergency response contact?
In case something were to happen, in case somebody entered the property and then there was some sort of something or other, any number of different things. So that was actually something that was added in.
To unlock the gate?
To unlock the gate, or if there's damage, or even just to be able to contact somebody in the middle of the night if something happens.
There is code that deals with life safety of lithium batteries now, and New York City's code requires an emergency response person if there's a fire that happens. So I don't know.
So this has not been adopted yet.
This has currently been, what I would say, blessed by the ordinance committee. It goes before the town board next week, the 19th, the week after next, to set a public hearing for the January meeting. In addition to this, the ordinance committee is recommending a moratorium be enacted until such time as this is adopted to prohibit the issuance of any permits for ground-mounted solar systems.
And so the town board can do that.
What I'll go ahead and offer again is that there are virtual power plants where, and the reason why I'm mentioning that is what they'll do is they'll aggregate everybody that has the solar panel, whether it's residential or whatever, underneath somebody or a company that goes ahead and controls the power and how it is put back into the grid, typically at high peak hours, so that they get paid a lot of money to be able to go ahead and make that power available. If there's going to be continued residential development, we talked about this last time, mentioned it and suggested it. If instead of having a green area, in an area that's not necessarily, really green or open land of any real value, they could put solar panels in that area. And those solar panels could be there, and the power could be aggregated for that particular community. That's what's happening out west right now with these big facilities that we're talking about.
I did think that was a decent idea where, you know, you'd have to have, you know, some of these developments have 28 acres or whatever of kind of empty area that becomes nothing really, green space, I guess.
The, in Uptown, obviously, that's really where the town for the next 20, 30 years is going to see primary development. And there's so many projects already in the pipeline with that. And a lot of the conversations that we're having are relative to net zero construction. Solar Factory Village is a perfect example of that. He has a prototype model for 3-story buildings now, Ryan Wallace, and those are net zero. And I really do believe with the financial incentives and the different components, you're going to see more building integrated solar, especially in Uptown with the construction of these new high-rise buildings, 3- and 4-story buildings that they're going to have solar. It doesn't have to be on the ground. It could be on the roof. It could be integrated in the side panels of the building.
Yeah.
You know, those types of things. And I think you're going to really start seeing more of that. You know.
There are window glass that's available now that's equally sufficient as you know, the technology that you're seeing being deployed today.
What did you tell me the flexible stuff was called? You said there was like flexible solar panels.
I don't remember the exact name, but you're talking about phase change materials.
I don't know, you said it was almost like a film or something that is like a
Yeah,
solar panel.
there are films available now that you could attach to your current windows that you have, and it will generate electricity. I think that Biden just came out and said that they're going to invest in technology for geothermal. That would be really interesting to see a community geothermal system, you know, here for us, you know, in the town of Kennedy. But I just think that's really where we're going to go with it. And green hydrogen is another, you know, great renewable energy. Why are we putting all of this emphasis on solar panels? Because this is short-term thinking. We're going to tie up all this land for 20 years, and technology for geothermal is going to be. It's already pretty good right now. I think I saw something where they can generate up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, you know, water right now. To be able to go deeper, I think that the main problem that they're experiencing is that they need to come up with technology to build to drill below like 500 feet below the ground. Just for example, I don't know exactly what the depth is. If they're able to do that, they're going to be able to capture more heat and be more efficient in geothermal, and then that power or energy can be used to heat homes, or you know, maybe power power generators for generating electricity. That's definitely not something that you're going to find on an individual residence. But
I was having a conversation with somebody from the automotive industry just recently, and they said the almost exact same thing. They said, this is all fine about electric vehicles, whatever, that's the fad, but the hydrogen that's coming back, that's where it's going.
yeah, fuel cell hydrogen is the way to go. I'm not buying any electric vehicles anytime soon. We just got a General Motors contract for the next 7 years, so our products are going to be on every single EV from General Motors for the next 7 years, which is pretty exciting for me.
Right, exactly.
But I'm just amazed at how quickly we're racing to. And offshore wind, same thing. So how long are these towers going to last in those types of conditions? I think that there's going to be really cool fusion technology going to come out in the next 30 years or so. It's about, I think we've been waiting for about 50 or 60 years on fusion. That's 30 should do it.
So, because we don't have a quorum, can they provide casual comments on this?
Yeah, they can make comments, and then we should just note that the forum wasn't present, but they can make comments.
I think that we should sit back and take some time to read through this carefully to make sure that we understand everything that's being We appreciate the fact that, you know, that one of the requirements, thresholds to get this in place is speed address for agriculture. And that we're being requested to provide advice, but, you know, we'll do so
Yep.
probably in the new year.
You have time too, because, and that was one of the reasons why the ordinance committee is recommending the moratorium. Because the town board would be setting the public hearing for, I think we said, actually, I don't even think we can do it on January 9th because it's got to go to the county for planning board referral.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be either
It's probably
January or
next week,
February,
or February.
probably the February meeting more than likely.
But the
So you got time.
moratorium is set for January.
Yeah, the moratorium, we'll enact that immediately. That basically stops ground mounted solar systems temporarily at least.
So that then they can go through the
Spend the
process
time going through
appropriately
this.
with it. So are you saying you kind of want to wait until your January meeting to provide an official comment, or do you want to?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
good for
but-
everybody else to look through it also.
I don't think there's any harm with that.
Okay.
Looks good though,
Yeah, it's
you know, from what I've looked at right now.
comprehensive.
The ordinance committee really has spent a considerable amount of time really trying to find a balance and really try to incorporate everything as much as possible. And really, the basis for all of it was, you know, the planning board really generated it. Bob, of course, from the planning board really took the initiative because he saw some of the changes coming, some of the applications, but everybody, I feel like, underlying motivation was to continue to keep that piece in there about the protection, not a loss of valuable agricultural land, and what can we do to make sure we don't lose all of our large farm fields to solar farms.
I do have an interesting comment. It seems that not allowing battery storage system resulting in 1 megawatt of AC storage shall not be permitted
Mhm.
in any way whatsoever.
They were very hardline on that.
Why?
There was a lot of discussion about it, and the majority of the ordinance committee members felt like they didn't want the traditional large-scale battery storage that we see across the nation as they did the research, or essentially the tractor-trailer containers, right?
Yeah.
They
Utility
did,
trailers.
right. They didn't like the aesthetic looks of those. They don't feel it's appropriate to have those scattered around the hillside from the town of Canandaigua. And they were just, it was a hard no. More so for aesthetic reasons than anything.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Why?
Yeah.
You know, is that for safety reasons?
Yeah.
There is code. This is probably going to be a big rubbing point, though.
Mhm.
I think this is where the code is going to get, you know, the law is going to get challenged. This is in that area right there,
Mhm.
because they do go hand in hand.
Mhm.
You have to be able to store the energy when you're not using it.
Right. There is a, what is it, the tier 4 that I think has a piece in there relative to storage, but you know, there could be some discussion about maybe trying to do something under tier 4, but yeah, they were pretty restrictive with that piece specifically. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about that. And that was not unanimous, but the majority didn't want it.
Understandable. They're pretty ugly.
Are you able to send this in an email to the rest of the?
Yeah, you
I
have
did.
it right.
you did? Oh, that's right.
I'd suggest too that you put Buy America in here someplace. If it's made in China, it's not allowed in the town of Canandaigua.
That's where most of it comes from.
Yeah.
I know that's where it all comes from. There are ships that are prohibited from docking that are filled with Chinese solar panels right now. And they just allowed one to dock, much to the chagrin of all the U.S. Solar panels manufacturers.
You know what's going to be interesting about that, though, is with the new, I don't remember if it was an executive order or if it was a law. I almost think it was a law. With the new CHIPS law, you are not allowed to expend any federal, state, or local grant monies on anything that involves a chip coming from something that was manufactured outside the US,
I think that's great.
which is the whole big push for Micron now, and we've got Akustos and the chips plants that are just getting ready to go. And so, like, even just to give you an example, we're recording again, it's still fine. The security systems, including our own, are being fixed because they involve chips that we now have to get rid of.
Yeah, we had to alter our grant award.
Yeah.
Purchases for cybersecurity, because we couldn't buy security cameras from China.
So, I mean, and actually, it's been in the news recently that high something or other vision, high tech vision, whatever the name is. I've even seen it in the news lately. It's very public that's all banned from any governmental institution now. And so the company based in China is suing the United States government, but so far it's not making they're not making any headway. And so everybody's having to make changes to that.
Yeah. Thanks, great. Because we need a secure supply chain. That became really evident when we didn't have any PPE for COVID.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of debate about China is taking all of the monies and they're investing it into their military to
Mhm.
go ahead and kind of contest,
Right.
the West.
Right. But a lot of these going back to the solar, that are now getting these grants, they cannot use anything that's being manufactured with these chips from overseas. So I think we're going to see maybe a new balance here.
There are actually solar manufacturing facilities in the United States. I know that there's one in Michigan. There's another one, out west someplace. So they say that the technology, what they're talking about is the technology of our solar panels aren't as good or as efficient as the Chinese ones. We spend a lot of time in R&D to develop what they've got. And they're saying that without the Chinese competition, there won't be enough R&D and development of the solar panel industry in North America or the U.S. So they're trying to prove that competition is required in order to continue to see, technological developments.
They're definitely changing. I've also seen stories recently about the Chinese chip plants are just being decimated now because of the U.S. not buying.
Yeah.
And, so their R&D may just significantly drop.
Yeah. There's also Taiwan is prohibited from providing any type of R&D support for the Chinese chip manufacturers, and also not able to sell them chips anymore. All the technology started here, and it just got transferred there. So,
the thing that's been interesting over the last couple of months, as I've been learning more about these chip plants and site selections at the national level and stuff, they need clean, fresh water to wash the chip boards while they're manufacturing. And actually, town board member Terry Finelli, somebody knows, as a family member involved with that, was telling me some of that. And so they need an incredible amount of water every single day to be able to do that. And so they're very interested in being in our area with the supply of fresh water.
yeah, definitely. It's been something that I've spoken about for 25 years. Why the heck is everything built up in Texas, or Arizona, where there's a lack of water? We've got wide open land, cheap land. We've got fresh air. We've got. Oh, that's right. We don't want to talk to people about the Finger Lakes area and let them to know how great it is here, so they start moving. That'll ruin our lifestyle. But yeah, you're right. Fresh water is really important in the manufacturing process of chips. By the way, there is a battery at University of Binghamton, where Dr. Stan Whittingham is was awarded the Nobel Prize for Science for inventing the lithium battery. That's going to be part of that Micron chip. There's also going to be, I think, a Korean company came in and started to develop a battery recycling facility, and they're building a battery related industry around Binghamton right now with a lot of money invested by the state into that area. And
There's going to be so many like spin-off supply chain type things associated. I mean, so Micron, the facility, right, is going up north of Syracuse. There's already a huge connection with Onondaga Community College, and then Binghamton, you're right, and then now there's another one going over in Genesee County with I mean, and we're right in the middle of all of it, so you're going to see stuff.
RIT has a chip design program there. And that's all part of an organization called New York Best, which is they're in Albany, so they work with NYSERDA. We all know who they are. So there's a big push on, and actually Cuomo started this whole renewable energy thing. By 2050, we had to be a certain percentage total renewable energy. I hope we can do it for my grandchildren's sake.
So maybe we can send out a reminder for everybody just to review this before the next meeting.
And can you imagine all of that development pressure coming here against the ag community? I mean, the ag community.
Well, we have, one of the things that I think that we are well positioned for the next 20 years is we have now really mapped out and laid out all of our natural resources, our areas. We have our strategic farmland protection area, our woodland, we've got the lake, we've got the senior view shed, we have all that. And we have an area that we've said, okay, in this area, we'll accept much greater density. And we're just starting on that. And that's going to supply us enough for quite some time, especially by allowing them to go up 4-story buildings and making sure that we have the utilities in place. And that's something that we're actively doing right now. But then even when you talk about spin-off businesses, that area is also next to our industrial area, next to the airport. So it's all of that stuff can be together as opposed to chewing up farmland. So
That's great.
it's obviously it's years of a lot of people working on this and the planning efforts, and now we just got to stick to it. We got to stick to the plan.
By the way, there is an Army Reserve Center up off of Paul Road in Rochester on the other side of the Rochester Airport, and the whole parking lot is covered by solar panels. And it's great to go ahead and protect the cars from the snow and direct sunlight. Has there been any consideration to go ahead and direct these solar panel companies to covering parking lots?
Well, like in Uptown, some of those types of conversations are easier to be had relative to the greater density and build out versus other areas of the town that are more rural, that you're not necessarily building large parking lots, right? So we really haven't been, for quite some time, the town, there's no new like shopping plazas or anything like that. It's redevelopment of them. So you're not really building big parking lots. And even like in Uptown with the new Edgemere building, that's 48 apartments going on Parkside Drive, we actually intentionally in that one, we said, we don't want you to build a bunch of parking. We want you to use the parking that's already available in the neighboring parcel. Try to, as much as possible, knowing that your clients probably are going to only have one vehicle, maybe two, some may have two, but a lot of them will have none or one. Make sure that there's access to public transportation versus big parking lots. And so rethinking about that whole thing, especially for Uptown. Uptown is like building a new city from the ground up. And so it's just a completely different, but what's very interesting for Canandaigua, and I think the taxpayers of the future of the town of Canandaigua over the next 10 to 20 years, We're currently at about $1.7 billion in assessed value, and I'll tell you why that means in a second. Right now, Uptown is assessed for $85 million. Sarah's heard this story already once today. We have right now in the pipeline $600 million in new projects in the pipeline. They've already made application to us. Okay, so that puts us closer to $2.5 billion in assessed value. By the time this thing builds out, will easily be $3 billion. Why is that important? Because as cost of goods and services continue to go up for town of Canandaigua, we're going to be able to easily hold the tax rate flat or maybe even reduce it. So the future residents of the town of Canandaigua, because even like the services that Uptown is different versus you guys or even me all being town residents, right? That has its own taxing district too, the Uptown Business Improvement District. So that's taxed differently as opposed to all of the residents having to pay in taxes for those extra services.
You know, with all the additional people that are here and all the additional students that are going to be occupying the school system, there's going to be more.
But that's so far down. Their enrollment is so down that they're afraid that they're going to have to start doing something different unless there's more people coming in. But what they keep saying is that they need more single-family homes as opposed to apartments, because the apartments either don't necessarily have children or in the transit nature, it's not the same types of students that are coming in. But their enrollment is way, way down. They said that this year is one of the smallest enrollment periods classes that they've had in modern history. But Victor, on the other hand, is just going crazy. But a lot of that's being driven by the development of Farmington.
Mhm.
And we have Battleford Brook.
Which has always been, ever since the very beginning, right? We've always called it the community separator. That's that Paddleford Brook Greenway, you're coming down, right? And we've got our farmland, it's a community break intentionally. Forever, hopefully, you'll drive past farm fields before you can come into Canandaigua. And it'll be a visual community separator. It's great. And then you're going to come to 4-story tall buildings, but it's a different story.
And you'll be able to see all the farm fields from the top of the.
Right? You will. You absolutely will.
I didn't really feel right.
Some of them.
Very southern most of them.
Yeah.
Don't think I have anything else.
No.
Interesting conversation.
Thank you for the entertaining
No paper cut.
conversation.
It was.
So your next meeting is January 12th, so we'll wait for the reminder of stuff till after the holidays. Because I
Yeah.
don't think it's gonna get, and we're sending it out now.
Yeah, everybody just blow it off.
But we'll get the comments over to the planning board for the two reports.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy holidays.